Hello and welcome back to One-on-One. I'm Martin Falls, and what a guest we have lined up for you today. He comes from a simple background, but when you meet our guest today, you're going to understand that not only was he a hard worker, he was a pretty good businessman. And he's had his hands in several businesses along the way, grew up down the bayou, and we're going to hear his story when we come back from the break right here on One-on-One. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. And welcome back to One-on-One. As promised, we have a very interesting guest today. His name is Mr. Andrew Blanchard. I know a lot of you here in the area know the name, know the hard work, know the man himself. Mr. Andrew, good to see you. How are you today?
I'm doing fine, Martin.
Your story is amazing. You know, a lot of people eat shrimp their whole life. They get canned shrimp. They get shrimp. They don't know where it comes from a lot of the times. But your story starts off at an early age. But I want to go way back. I guess my first question to you would be, what's the earliest years you can remember, and where were you?
The earliest years I can remember growing up with my father, he had a little shrimp boat. And even though he worked in the oil field, on his days off, he had a passion to go shrimping. So he'd drag us on his shrimp boat, and we go out, every day and come back every day, and really didn't have a passion that I would be in the shrimp business, other than as a young boy going to help my dad, in the shrimp business, right there. And then as I grew up, we just, went through school, and after school, graduated from high school, and after I graduated from high school, I was really too young to go and work in the workplace. And so I told my mom, I said, look, the shrimp plant is right up the road right here. I'm just gonna go apply for a job at the shrimp plant until I reach 18, and then I'm gonna go ahead and go and find my own thing. Well, I got my feet soaking wet in shrimp juice, and I just never left, right there.
But did you ask your mom at an early age? I remember reading maybe around 16 years old, or was it earlier than that?
Yeah.
16, you said, I want some traps. I want to go out and help the family raise a little money and put money on the table. And what was her response?
My mom at first, she thought I was crazy, right there. She, times was hard, raising, my mom had 6 children, and, times was hard, and, a dozen of traps back then was, I so clearly baked, it was $36 a dozen, and that was in about 72, it was. Told us, Mom, come on, I'm gonna pay you back in a week, right there. So she dug deep, she ended up ordering me the traps, but she held me accountable for that $36 that I borrowed from her.
So she originally told you no.
That's correct.
And then you put on your salesman's hat.
That's correct.
And you talked her into it. She was teaching you accountability.
Correct.
And later when you would get bank loans and everything else, you got to pay the note back. She was teaching you life's lessons.
That's correct. She really was. And at the time, I didn't realize that. But as I grew older, that was actually the first start of, me, borrowing money, repaying money back. And it was a good education for us,
Where'd you get your entrepreneurial spirit? Did it come from your mom, or did it come from your dad?
I really think it came from my mom. We spent more time with her because my dad worked in the oil field.
Yeah.
And so we had more time with her than anything. And in the early age, my dad, and my mom, they ended up buying a car wash in the Ocala.
More than one car wash.
Yeah, we ended up having 2 of them.
Yeah.
In the evening, my mom would go and check the vendor box, get the money, come back, and we had to help her put all these quarters together to know what the cash flow was for the day, and so that taught us a lot too with understanding, cash flow and collecting money and saving money also, in order to pay.
Isn't that funny how that works? My dad had a debit account with Union National, and he had a pouch, and every day we'd come back, and they would pay their premiums.
Correct.
With a lot of change.
Right.
And he would dump the change on the table, and we'd help him count it. But you're right. It gave us a knowledge at an early age of counting. So when you get to school at an early age and they asking you math, you remember because you would have to put the numbers together sometimes, and it would come a little quicker.
That's right. Yeah, it sure would. That's what actually, I guess, started my entrepreneurship, businesses that we do is at an early age starting. My mom's not alive today, but a lot of credit goes to my mom. And then, credit goes to my dad, too, for at least supporting us to get to where we were, today, because my mom raised 5 children. We all do quite well. So my mom was, before she passed, she was proud of all of her children, like most parents are, of their children.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
HTV, bringing you local news and sports for over 36 years. From tragic events to heartwarming stories from the community, sports from the regular season and into the playoffs. We were there each time COVID struck. And when Hurricane Ida devastated the area, HTV was there before and after the storm, bringing you live storm track updates and coverage of the aftermath. When other news outlets left, HTV was there, helping those in need. So for your news, stick with the ones you know, the ones that know you.
You've had a few children, too, with two separate wives, and I think you named one of your company, Triple T.
Right.
After the first three, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Triple T, after working, well, let me go back, a little bit. When I got to the age of 17, I graduated from high school, started at the shrimp plant. But when I started there, I continued to work there till I was 19, still worked there. But the management there saw something in me, or they just wanted to get out. But they trained me in order to run this processing plant. Well, by the time I was 19, the owner of the processing plant was a Jewish family out of New Orleans, and they contacted me and they said, look, if you stay with us, we're going to build you a brand new plant. So I just agreed, fine. So they put up the money. We found an engineer. We built this brand new processing plant. It was a state-of-the-art plant, and it was in 1980. We moved in 1981 in that processing plant, and I managed it until 1995. And in 1995, the company I worked for was ConAgra, and they wanted to get out of the seafood business. So I could have picked anywhere in the country to go and manage one of their processing plants, that they had all over. And I said, well, I don't want to leave South Louisiana. And I said, why don't y'all just sell me the plant? You interested in buying it? I said, if y'all make the numbers right, I said, maybe I can make it happen. And they did that. They made the numbers right. I went to our local bank. They ended up, getting the loan passed through. And, that's where me and my first wife, when we decided, well, what we going to name the company? And we had our 3 children, Toby, Todd, and Tessie, and said, why don't we just name it Triple T Seafood, right? And that's how Triple T was named. And so many individuals from the bayou worked in the shrimp processing plant. A lot of young adults today that I see on the street. Mr. Angel, thank you for letting us work there, because they worked there, they worked hard, we trained them, and they went on to other things that was very, very.
Was that the negotiation with the Mr. Israel, if I remember right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was that? Because, and I'm not stereotyping the Jewish community, but they're very tough business people.
Right.
At an age where you were, was that a tough negotiation?
at the time, I guess it wasn't for him because they were making money with shrimp. you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
We didn't have imports at the time, right? And they were actually in the coffee business. They traded coffee. They ended up getting in the seafood business, and they wasn't in the processing part of the business. They were more in the sales part of the business. But then Mr. Burkhardt Chauvin, who owns Chauvin Fishing and Packing,
Right.
he ended up negotiating a sale to Mr. Israel, and that's how the Chauvin family exited the seafood industry,
Yeah.
and that's how the Israels got into the shrimp business.
But I see further than that. What did they see in you? They had to see something.
But I keep on saying that till today. They saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself at the time. We learned how to manage people, and I guess and manage people and manage money too at the same time, because they trusted me with their checkbook. Right there, I had basically an open account of money, right there. Never had to call for it and just write checks. As long as you was writing checks for shrimp, I just produced the shrimp. I really didn't have much to do with sales, of the shrimp, because we had a team that was put together to do the sales. And I learned sales as I managed the business further. We learned sales as we went along,
Right.
Right there. So when we bought the processing plant in 1995, we was forced then to make sales, learn sales and all. And that was a challenge. I knew how to process shrimp, but I really didn't know how to sell shrimp.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
When did it start moving from local people buying your shrimp to, I know at one point, because I knew Mr. Dickie Fake real well because I went to
Right.
school with his son, they were transporting shrimp to New York and different places. When did that all start taking place?
Back in the day, shrimp, then we didn't have refrigerated trailers or anything. Now this is a little bit before my time, but they would cook shrimp in order to shrink the shrimp to get as much weight as they could at a low volume. And then after it was frozen, it was put into a vacuum can. The product was put on rail car to ship to the Northeast. And the reason it went to the Northeast, that's where the money was at. It was just follow the money. So, we shipped to New York, we shipped to Boston, we shipped to DC, in Virginia, and that's the main reason, the early ages right there. And then when refrigerated trucks got available, we were still cooking shrimp, but we were still transporting it by truck instead of by rail. And tons of cooked shrimp would go up to the Northeast. And that went on for, I guess, into the early 80s right there. And that's when the cooked shrimp business kind of started depleting itself due to imports. The government started, letting imports come into the country. And when that happened, it just exploded. Imports exploded.
How many employees did you have in your heyday?
Oh, in my heyday, when I had all three of the processing plants going, we had over 300 employees working for us. And at that time, my accountant had told me, he said, I think you probably the largest self-employed person that's employed, in the parish at one time, right there. So we had a lot of employees work for us, and we ran our plants at the time 24 hours a day. We ran 3 8-hour shifts, just working domestic shrimp, and we bought shrimp from Brownsville, Texas, to Key West, Florida, from Key West, Florida, all the way up the Virginia coast. So we followed the shrimp. As the shrimp migrated, we followed the shrimp and brought the shrimp into our processing plants in order to keep them plants just running, all the time, But we had a great demand back then.
But you led me right into my next question because you said domestic
Correct.
shrimp. The imported shrimp has really killed the domestic shrimp industry, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it started back in the early 80s, and here we are in 2025, and it's just multiplied, by billions of pounds now. Instead of just having a couple of 100,000 pounds enter the country, now we probably import 3 billion pounds a year. We only consume 1 billion pounds, so we always got a surplus of shrimp of 2 billion pounds in the country. So the prices are always at a low right now because you can get shrimp from East Coast to West Coast, north to south. No matter where you go, all at the same price.
Supply and demand.
Yes, that's all it is a
bottom
supply
line.
and demand.
Yeah,
That's correct,
bottom.
Martin, it is.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because we did stories way back on the shrimp peeler
Right.
from the LePere family, who, I think he was out of New Orleans, the one who invented
Right.
it, pretty
Yeah.
sure. But so you got to see all this technology, and there was a big faction of, human labor,
Right.
but you got to see technology changing hands too.
That's right. When I first started, everything was hand peeled. We'd put several hundred ladies on a picking table and but we paid them to hand peel shrimp, and then they hand peel it, devein it, then it went to the cooker to get cooked. And then when the development of the shrimp peeler came out, I guess that must have been in the mid-'70s when the development of the shrimp peeler, and then everybody wanted to get into the peeled shrimp business. So, we was LePere family. Latrim was a company back then that was manufacturing the peeler. Everybody wanted to be in the peel meat business. So we transitioned from manual labor of peeling shrimp to machinery labor peeling shrimp.
That was a pretty ingenious invention.
It,
I think they said it started off with a washing machine.
That's correct.
Concept.
Mr. LePere that invented it, he just so happened, I guess his mom had him doing laundry one day and she had him peeling shrimp. So he just stuck the shrimp, the tail through the ring of washing machine, and the meat went one way and the shell went the other way. And he had an incredible...
And the light bulb went off.
That's right. Then the light bulb went off, and he just, invented the peeling machine, right. And a very, very, interesting, piece of machinery, that was just perfected to do, shrimp peeling, right there.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.
Where sugar cane is grown, so much to see on HTV. Stick with us 'cause we're your home.